necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
Welcome to the O Show. I'm Laura Babcock, joined by Loren Lieberman. We'll say hi to Loren in just a second. But first, here's what's coming up on tonight's show. We are going to be talking about the Teachers' Action, canceling some extracurricular activities around town. We'll also talk about the city's new tactic in its so-called war against Charlton House. We're also going to find out a little bit about the homeless crisis and what council has decided they're going to do about it, taking the fight all the way to Queen's Park. And it's 1 week until the big HECFI decision, so we'll do the breakdown on that, plus all the way to goes. Loren, how you doing?
I'm all right. A wonderful weekend, bringing in the year 5,773. Lots of good family time. And
Rosh Hashanah?
You bet, Rosh Hashanah it was. And how about you, Laura? What's going on?
Well, you know, had a kind of a low-key weekend, wasn't feeling too well, but something I'm excited about today, other than what's happening down in the U.S. with the 47%, but we won't get into that, is the Urbanicity article. I had a chance to write something about my feeling on the casino debate, and it's being received very well. So that's in Urbanicity this month, if you want to hear my thoughts on a casino
I
in the
thought that
downtown
was
core.
Larry Deanne's article.
No, this would be mine. I don't know about Larry's article, but I kind of think there should be an end to the debate, and I'll tell you why in Urbanicity. So, Lauren, we got a lot to talk about. One of the big things going on is, if you will, no longer a debate between the province and the teachers. Yeah. It's become quite a fight. As you know, legislation was just passed. So let's go to you for only the facts, and then we'll talk about what's really going on.
Right. Well, only the facts on this issue. The teacher strikeout legislation freezes pay for all but new teachers, cuts sick days, bans strikes, and lockouts for 2 years. That is exactly what is all the negatives of what Dalton McGuinty's government has done to our teachers. And I think we're going to be talking more about, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, what the teachers are doing to the students.
Well, there you go. Many teachers are opting out. They don't want to do any, or they're opting out of volunteering, and that's an important word there, Lauren, for extracurricular activities because of the legislation in protest to that. You know, Lauren, how do you feel about this? I've got some mixed feelings on it myself.
I can't believe that the teachers are saying in one hand that this is a fight between them and the government, and of course they don't want to victimize any students, and the only thing that they're lashing out against would be the students. I think it's a terrible move. You're not going to get public support by alienating students. Those students ideally have parents who are voters. I think it's a bad move, and I think the teachers are making the situation worse for themselves.
You know, I support the fact that they have to do something, because when you look at the legislation, I realize that it was brought down during the austerity budget process happening with the McGuinty government at Queen's Park, and so they're looking for cuts, and all cuts are painful. But the part of the legislation that bans them effectively from any kind of collective bargaining for 2 years, it kind of is reminiscent of what was happening down in Wisconsin. It seems like a bit of a war on union power, and I understand that teachers have fought hard for the benefits that they do have, which are extensive. You know, they get paid fairly well, they get their summer time off, they do get sick days, they do have, you know, retirement plans. They have a lot of things that people who aren't working in a unionized job would like to have, so there's not a tremendous amount of sympathy for them in those regards, but they did fight hard for it. And so to have a government now say, well, you can't fight your usual way of fighting for the next 2 years, we're banning that legislatively, is something that I think on a principled ground they have to take some kind of action against. Now they are going to, as we announced last week, going to fight this through the courts, which I think is appropriate. They say all the way to the Supreme Court. But I agree with you, Lauren. Deciding to withdraw from their volunteering, again, that's a key word, of extracurricular activities, I think sends the wrong message. Yes, of course, they don't have to do extracurricular activities, but you don't volunteer because of a strategic or cynical reason. You volunteer because it's good for children or good because you want to. So to pull that away as a tactic in this tough battle seems like a cynical move, a strategic move, and I think it's the wrong one.
Well, of course, the teachers are saying this is not a union directive. It is teachers independently within schools deciding to do that. I think they're picking a fight with with the wrong person if in fact there is a fight to be picked at all. It's a 2-year timeout. The Catholic School Board was more than happy to sign, and it's not like suddenly this was foisted upon them. No agreement could be reached, so this is what you got.
Right, and I understand that. And one thing that's interesting is that the parents are already getting upset, and for good reason. You know, sports or extracurricular activities are formative. They're not technically part of the academic part or the curriculum of education, but they're formative and they're important.
They also have a lot to do with post-secondary. If this is your senior year of football and you were looking to see if you could get a scholarship in that way, there's lots of effect of this, and it's not right. And at least the teachers could stop saying that they're all in favor of the child. The teachers are in favor of the teachers, clearly.
Well, you know, I can't believe that entirely because I do respect teachers.
Well, any teacher that's no longer volunteering or making their commitments to extracurricular can no longer say that.
I won't take it as far as saying that with a blanket statement that any teacher participating in this protest action doesn't care about the children. What I think they're doing is they're frustrated, it's misguided, and they don't feel like they have a lot of options. But they do fight it in the courts and then just give the best service you can to the children that you care about would be my recommendation on this. But it's a tough situation. Yeah. Okay, Loren, let's talk about the next topic, which also involves children. In fact, involves the children. I mean, these are teenage girls at Charlton House. Give us the facts.
Yeah, this is an ongoing situation that seems to only get worse. And only the facts on this one, the children of Charlton Linwood. Charlton Linwood Center is a group home for 8 girls with mental illness. And the City Hall is making a war out of what easily could have been resolved here. Has there been any update as we sit here taping it based on what's happening right now at Council, Laura?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, just as a bit of background, radial separation was the reason that City Hall initially said they couldn't support a simple request, I think, for Charlton wanted to say, you know what, we're in a building that is owned by the city, requires millions of dollars in renovations. We'd like to move over to an existing facility they own on Augusta Street. The city said no because of something called the radial bylaw, which we've talked about last season, Loren, which says you can't have 2 of these similar kind of residences within so many meters of each other because it causes a saturation of that kind of behavior in a neighborhood. So that was initially going to be the idea, and of course that's Council's position. It was going to go to the OMB, and now at the last minute, Council has said, or not Council rather, staff are coming forward with a recommendation to Council, which said, you know what, let's classify this group differently, because now that we've looked at it in finer detail, because there's day programs and there's going to be overnight programs, this is now a different classification, which means more harm to the area, more harm to the neighborhood. It's a cynical move, as you'll see on our tweet of the week. There's a lot of outrage. Someone called it a slimy move. So today was the day that this recommendation, a very misguided recommendation, reprehensible, was going to go to City Council. And I've been talking to the Spectator reporters on Twitter all day trying to find out updates, but Council has been in this horrible backlog dealing with the issue for licensing for rental facilities. I know cab drivers have been waiting 6-7 hours to get their item on the agenda. So as of taping, I have not heard how Council's deciding to go on this with Charlton House. But, you know, it brings up the question, was city staff directed to find another tactic? Because I think when they were going to the OMB, they knew, and it had already come out from Barbara Hall and the Human Rights Commission, that radial separation is in fact unconstitutional. And I don't think that they thought they were going to win at the OMB. So this to me seems like staff was asked to go back and find some other way to get at Charlton House. And let me just make this point, Loren. These are children we're talking about. Hamilton's supposed to be the best place to raise a child. That's our big vision, right? These are children. These are girls who happen to need our help. The fact that they are seeing their city fight so vociferously against them and use tactics that are, you know, deplorable at best sends a message that Hamilton is not the best place to raise a child, sends a message that Council really doesn't care about these girls. I wonder if these girls had any other kind of disability, would this even be happening? I think it's terrible as a stigma against mental health. I think it's a terrible way to treat children in our community.
I don't think a city that creates a rule can vote against its own rule. And the radial separation bylaw, whether or not the OMB would declare it unconstitutional or not, it's not the point yet. That if the city is looking for a solution, both for Linwood Charlton House and for the residents of the Corktown neighborhood, there are other things that can be done here. It does stink a bit, like some last-minute Hail Mary attempt here to just change all the rules here. This isn't about the city being mean to girls with mental challenges. It's not. This is about a neighborhood that has this rule, as do all kinds of other neighborhoods, for a very good reason. Not necessarily this reason, but they need to go back to that bylaw and tweak it to see what they can do here. Taxpayers, homeowners, property values, those are all considerations as well. And I'm not saying that I'm not in support of what they do at Linwood Charlton House, but they should be readjusting the rules, not just for this, but for the entire bylaw, so that it makes sense and reflects.
I agree. In the radial separation bylaw, if in fact it's declared unconstitutional anyway at some higher level, they're going to have to redress that. They should look at it. But you and I both know, Loren, that council has lots of ways of getting things done. And if there was support for the move to Augusta, then they would have probably found a way to do it even with that bylaw in place. Now, I might sound a little cynical there, but I'm finding it a little hard to totally take your argument that their hands are tied here, especially seeing this last-minute move. Now, whether it was council-directed staff to do it or staff came up with this all on their own to classify these 8 girls as being even less savory, an element in the neighborhood, I don't know. But it does send a message. And as Councillor Clark said on the Bill Kelly Show this morning, that the city's vision of the best place to raise a child is a lie if they continue on this course with Charlton House. That's pretty strong language.
I can't argue with any of that, but I don't think that the city is doing this of their own accord. I think they are defending citizens, taxpayers, and homeowners who very much are in support of this bylaw. Not this bylaw against Linwood Charlton House, but this bylaw in general.
Okay, good points. Let's get on to the next topic we want to talk about. This is another, I hate using the word war because I'm really not somebody who loves war, but this is how it's been described. Both the Charlton House situation we just talked about, it was described in the Hamilton Spectator, I believe, as a war on Charlton House. And this is something that council talked about with the situation with the homeless crisis. Let's get the facts on this, and then we'll talk about what council wants to do about it.
So only the facts. The crisis of homelessness, the province downloading more costs of programs for homelessness to the city after recent downloading of discretionary benefits. I don't even know where to begin with this.
Well, instead of paying for the shortfall, council's declaring a crisis and launching a campaign against the premier.
Every time that there's more downloading, we as a municipality deal with this as if we're the only city. And instead, we need to, we're all Ontarians here, and we're all getting screwed, all city dwellers, whether this is happening, with the exception of Toronto, because Dalton doesn't mess with Geo to the same extent. We need to be talking to our MPPs, and this is not a Hamilton issue. This is a provincial government issue.
I think you make an excellent point. It does seem as though sometimes Hamilton is, you know, the lone voice.
Really
out there
myopic
in the
on this, yeah.
Yeah, and so I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Andrea Horvath has already brought this up as part of, you know, her charge against McGuinty at Queen's Park. But if not, I'm sure she will. And in terms of getting the other MPs, remember there used to be the Team Hamilton with the federal MPs back in the day. We need to have that kind of coordinated effort here at Queen's Park to push this agenda. I don't want to see Hamilton City Council jump on a bus, show up at Queen's Park, you know, and yell and scream. Although I did hear of a former Hamilton mayor, I think it was maybe Vic Copps, who chained himself to a tree at Queen's Park, did he not once, to make sure that the city was aware, or Queen's Park was aware of the plight of Hamilton. And that brings up an interesting point. I don't know if you saw Andrew Dreschel's column. He started off with the line, Hamilton has no mayor, talking about the backseat role that Mayor Bertina played in this whole debate at council, and that was a characterization one councillor made. I thought it was an incredibly inappropriate way to start a column because the evidence, of course, doesn't support that assertion. But what it was getting at was the fact that here we have council. You're saying they're floundering without the support at the provincial level. You know, the Spectator, Andrew Dreschel's commenting that, you know, the mayor's sort of not in this with council in a real leadership way. So it looks like it's going to be a failed campaign from the get-go. And the homeless people in this city, it is a crisis. We need this money from Queen's Park. I think Hamilton has a disproportionate amount of social services to those other cities that you cited. So the need here is greater. We just had the downloading of those discretionary benefits, meaning eyeglasses, baby cribs, you know, things you don't really need. And the city council had to come up with the millions to cover that gap. And now they're being asked to do this. They were about to try to recommend to cover the gap again. And some councillors said, no, this is enough. Hamilton has got to go to Queen's Park and make it clear to the premier that we cannot take this burden on our homeless in this city.
So I want to touch on Andrew Dreschel's comment. I watched that, the stream version,
The debate,
of that council meeting. With Deputy Mayor Councillor Partridge was running the show. And I think we have a mayor who can't win. If he stays out of it and lets the deputy mayor chair the meeting, he's weak and doesn't have leadership. If he sticks his nose in, he's sticking his nose in inappropriately. There were certainly some decorum issues, and Judy Partridge came down pretty reasonably on Sam Marula for his mutterings and otherwise. You can't have it both ways, and it's like, I get it. Spec hates Bob. Council hates Bob. Like, we know all this. So I would just like my Andrew Dreschel columns to start with something new and fresh, because I got that one loud and clear.
You know what, I'm not going to disagree with you on this. I read the column and I read it all the way through, and I looked at it.
That comment wasn't relevant to that meeting.
But there wasn't enough happening in that meeting that would even lead one to make that kind of conclusion. No. This was not a failure of leadership on behalf of the mayor. This was a single issue that council was all worked up about, and Bob weighed in at certain points on it. Now, do some councillors want to see a mayor who will chain themselves to a tree at Queen's Park like evict cops? Perhaps, but that's not what Bob Bertina has ever said he was going to do. That's not how
Bob
he said
Bertina made it very clear that if you want better relationships with the governing Toronto provincial government, then we better elect some people who are in government as opposed to
and he got a wee bit of trouble for that, standing up for the Liberals.
It seems to be a valid point today, though, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay, well, you know, we're going to watch this one, because the council has now said that they are going to go to Queen's Park, declare a Hamilton Day, and who knows what else. I'd like to see their execution on this campaign, because there is a homeless crisis, no laughing matter.
Yep.
And if we can't get the money from Queen's Park, we're going to have to find it in our own pockets, because people in this city deserve to have shelter. They deserve a home, no matter what. Okay, I want to thank a couple of people who help us out here on the O Show before we get to our final topic. Pennington's, they always give me great wardrobe here on the program, so I appreciate that, Pennington's. Check them out, they got some great stuff this fall. And also Madison Avenue Salon and Spa. Lots of people ask me where I get my hair done. That's where I get it done. Reno and his crew do an awesome job. Okay, coming up in downtown Hamilton, we've got a big decision, and that is what to do with HEC-5. There is going to be a vote a week from this show, and Loren, of course, you've got a conflict you got to declare here on the air with this, but then give us the facts.
I don't think it's a conflict at all. I've got a horse in the race. That's
okay,
for
a horse
sure.
in the race. There you go.
So HEC-5 happenings, city out. Well, I'm halfway there to clarify my. Let's get through this first. City out now to request for proposals for management of the Hamilton Entertainment and Convention Facilities, Inc. for the assets. So it's probably been about a year since this process has begun. Various presentations, various hurdles to clear along the way, and Tuesday will be decision day. So KPMG and Tony Tolis from the City of Hamilton's Finance Department will make their recommendations. Probably those recommendations will be public well before Tuesday's meeting, but things need to be ratified on Tuesday, of which a proponent or several will be chosen to run Copps Coliseum, the Convention Center, and Hamilton Place.
So just so I'm clear on a couple of technical points on this, you're not in conflict. There was a time when you had a kind of a gag order as one of the people submitting to speak about it publicly, and that has now been lifted, so you can talk about it, but I just want people to know you have a vested interest in this discussion, of course.
Absolutely,
You're one of the bidders.
as I am a partner on one of
the Carmen's one,
yes.
correct? And the other thing, too, is that I believe it comes to committee for decision Tuesday, but the actual ratification vote has to happen at council on Wednesday. Is that correct? Usually committees can't ratify.
Yeah, I think probably the bigger, we'll be seeing it come out on the agenda, where we will see what KPMG's recommendations are with Tony Tolis from the city. There has been a ton of discussion, meetings, presentations, and otherwise. And everything is on the table here. Status quo to multiple proponents sharing the spaces independently to one proponent running it all. It's it's a pretty big day for the City of Hamilton decision making.
And you bring up an interesting point there. Because there are so many different options, I reject the status quo option. I think the city had their shot at running it as an arm's length, and the thought of bringing it in-house any further scares me. Okay, let's let people who know how to hustle actually run entertainment facilities. But there's such a variety in the bids, from multinationals with a local partner to local stakeholders like the Carmen's Group, who everybody knows, like them or don't like them, like their history or don't like their history. They're known, and they have come out and said, this is our reputation, this is our city, you know our success record and you can trust us. But as I said, there's multinationals with a lot of experience, with a local connection as well, with another group. But it's the mixing and matching option that intrigues me, Loren, and I think the discussion so far has been kind of critical of the different people or the different bids, as opposed to saying this is a dream opportunity for this council to put together a puzzle that's going to work for the city. They can choose between all of these and make a real solution. What do you think?
AEG and Live Nation are 99.9% of the world's major concert
And that's the
producers.
multinational I was referring to, yeah.
Well, AEG is out. Previously, Live Nation remains. So this notion that we need to find the bid that's going to get Springsteen not to play once every 2 years, but to play once a month is ludicrous. Hamilton is Hamilton. Our proximity to Toronto, we get the shows that we get. The issue that should be on the table here, first and foremost, is how come it loses so much money, and how can we best mitigate that? So you can mix and match all you like with the various bids that are on the table to see what is best for the taxpayer. It is absolute lunacy to suggest that the major concert producers, the major event bookers, already are using the facility. Why would they use it significantly more? You've got Cops Coliseum in Hamilton. When there's going to be a B-level Ontario show after a Toronto date is played, it will come to Hamilton, and it doesn't matter who's running it.
Well, I think to answer our question that we're putting on this, how do they approach this vital vote? I'm suggesting they ignore the status quo option and make a mix of these bids, or find the bid solution that's really going to make a difference. And you're suggesting the bottom line should be the main consideration. Well, HECFI's lost us some taxpayer money. It's time for us to recoup those
I'm going to punch myself in the head after I say this, but there is a solid argument for the status quo, which is actually eliminating HECFI and making it a city department. So HECFI has been under serious scrutiny because it is a standalone, an arm's length, independent organization.
Okay, well, we're going to talk a lot more about this next Tuesday. Let's quickly get through our way to goes. Way to go, Loren, you can start this one off.
Sure, way to go. Wonderful weekend for James Street North, Tim Podesick and Supercrawl 2012. Congratulations and way to go.
Booyah. Good times. CBC's national coverage of Supercrawl. They were down there with the satellite truck out front of CBC Hamilton, and they were doing weather hits most of the day. Lots and lots of fabulous coverage for Hamilton. It was a thrill to watch that. So way to go, CBC. And also Best Start program, they found the justification for all-day junior kindergarten. It's better for children. My son joined it, and he's loving it, so I want to give them a shout-out. And also, of course, there's one more for you, and that was the big band from Hamilton that got on Letterman.
Right. Can we get the right graphic there, or?
Gentlemen and Cowards. Of Gentlemen and Cowards.
Gentlemen and Cowards won the contest.
There you go.
We're on the David Letterman show, and the way to go goes beyond just to them, but in my opinion, to the Hamilton music scene in general. So way to go.
So way to go to all of the above. A couple of quick things to keep in mind between now and next week's O Show. There is the new show Our City happening on Mondays with host Martinez Galenze. Check that out.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him, eh? But this Thursday, you don't want to miss the opinionators talking about provincial issues. Tara, Alex, and Ron always do a great job. It's moved to Thursday, so please check that out. And we will be back with more O Show next week. And, of course, we'll be talking a lot about what happened with HECFI and all these other issues. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Loren.
Take care.